Praise Abba, Abba Toda, once again for bringing us together, for showing us thy word. We praise thee and we thank thee for family and for thy cover, thy leading, thy opening of our eyes and our ears and our hearts to receive thee, Father, with our Ruach. We ask, Abba, that once again, that would show Eric exactly what thou wants us to see and that thou would have us receive it, that we can all be infected, I guess is the wrong word, but that we may all be just as just as excited and just as convicted of following and looking into thy word so that we may see what thou hast for us. We praise thee, Allah. Behashem Yahusha. Amen.
Amen. So we're still talking about some stuff in Revelation, and the talked about the what's called the Lord's Prayer, though it wasn't really that last week. And in chapter 7 of Revelation, he talks about these. First, he talks about the 144,000 who are sealed. And that word sealed, as we talked before, is het tav mem. And the next group of people is more than anybody can count. And this is Revelation 7, verse 14. They have washed their robes, made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Therefore, they are before the throne of Elohim. They serve him day and night in his temple. And that word serve is obed, ayin bet dalet, which is also the same word as worship. So they serve him. He doesn't need anything. What are they serving? Or are they worshiping? They're just standing there in awe, in a state of, you might say, ecstasy. He who sits on the throne will protect them. Protect them from what? Angels? I mean, who's going to break into the temple in heaven where the throne of Elohim is and mess with anybody there? They will not hunger nor thirst anymore, nor will the sun fall on them, nor any heat, because the Lamb which is in the midst of the throne will feed them, and he will lead them to fountains of living water, and Elohim will wipe every tear from their eyes. Well, if they're standing in the throne room, is he going to lead them outside into a garden where there's fountains of living water? See, if you start trying to picture the scene as if you're going to shoot a film, a video of this, how would you stage it? It gets kind of convoluted. The point is, these people in verse 12 are saying, Amen, blessing, glory, wisdom, and thanksgiving, and honor, and power, and might be to our Elohim forever and ever. Amen. Well, actually, the messengers are saying that, but what these people are saying is verse 10, salvation to our Elohim, to him sits on the throne, and to the Lamb. Does that mean that the Lamb is not the one who sits on the throne? Salvation to. So even in English, if you look at that and say salvation to our Elohim, I could say salvation belongs to, or salvation is from our Elohim. But to say salvation to our Elohim doesn't make any sense. I'm going to have to do a correction in my own mind, but it's not on the page. And this, again, is the AENT, the Aramaic English New Testament, Andrew Gabriel Roth. So as we're looking at simple English, it's not so simple. So that's verse 10. So if we look at it, that's the word porkna, Pei Vav Resh Kuf Nun Aleph, translated salvation, to Lamed, Aleph Lamed Hey Nun. This is Aramaic, so the suffix of our meaning us. In Hebrew, it would be nun vav, but here it's hey nun. But so the prefix letter lamed, well, what does the letter lamed as a prefix letter mean? So that phrase, ani ladodi, I am my beloveds, I belong to my beloveds. Vedodi li, lamed yod li is my beloved is mine. So it's possessed by. If you were going to, like one of the Psalms might say, lamed dalit vav dalit, and it's translated for David or to David, but it might be by David. So the letter lamed as a prefix could be either to or for or by or belonging to. So either you're sending it to or it belongs to. So this phrase, salvation to our Elohim, if they were saying salvation or this job of saving is our Elohim's possession, he who sits on the throne and to the Lamb, salvation is their gig, their business, their bailiwick. So the idea of saying, here's this group, and if you back up to verse 9, after these things I looked, and lo, a great multitude, which no one could number, from all the kindreds and nations and tribes and tongues, people from all around the world, who stood before the throne, before the Lamb, clothed in white robes and palms in their hands. And the word for palm literally means victory. But if I look at the I think the word here is dalet kuf lamed aleph. So if I'm looking at the Aramaic, which was written in Hebrew letters, the last three words in this sentence, see that when I read it in English, it says, clothed in white robes and palms in their hands. So, well, I noticed, well, hey, there's the word for clothing, samik tet lamed, white, het vav resh, tav aleph. That must be white robes. And then vav bet, aleph yod, dalet yod, hey vav nun. Well, yod dalet is yod, which is hand. Bet is a prefix, so that means in. And the vav nun suffix means their hands. So in their hands is what? Well, the last word in this sentence is spelled dalet, kuf, lamed, aleph. So the procedure, and I'm basically just showing this for people who want to engage this, you might say, the nature of the study. So I looked in Klein's dictionary under kuf, lamed, aleph. I'm just trying to find the word for palm branch in this case. Kuf, aleph is a suffix, you could say. Kuf lamed tav is, that just happens to show up in this page 582. It says a basket, kuf lamed tav, a plated basket. Twisted or plated, kuf lamed ayin. Well, the way you'd form a basket is by taking palm, what they call them, a frond, a leaf, and weaving them in and out. So if I look at kuf lamed aleph, kuf lamed is light, swift, fast, easy, not difficult, or unimportant. So the thing about kuf lamed is that you could say it's no big deal, meaning I don't care about it because it's no big deal, or it's no big deal, that's why I do it. I do it all the time because it's no big deal to me to do it. So it can go both ways and still mean it's no big deal. Lightness or levity. Kuf lamed aleph, lenient ruling, or to roast something. If you roast, you bake the water out of it and it gets light in weight. But that's not the word for palm frond. So what does that mean? It seems to me I found a different word, which I didn't. Roasted grain, parched corn, kuflamid yod. It seems to me in the Hebrew maybe there was another word somewhere that actually meant, or that the word palm branch meant triumph. And so when you see a palm branch, it's like, hey, we win. But see, salvation belongs to our Elohim is what they said, right? They're holding these palm branches, which means no big deal. This is light and easy. So if I'm going to look at the Aramaic and then look at the dictionary, I've got to try to interpret, wrap them around in my mind. And if it doesn't make sense, so that's what I was saying when I got this other book, the Hebrew Revelation they got from India, and different words are used. In fact, I could look in here, and that's Revelation 7:10. Let me check here real quick. Lamed Het Shin. This is Lamed Lamed He Shin He. Salvation, that would be to the Lamb. This is Ayin Nun Pei Yod Mem. Ayin Nun Pei Yod Mem. So that's on page 477 of Klein's, down at the bottom right. Ayin Nun Pei is branch or bough, B-O-U-G-H. Branches, full of branches. It doesn't say necessarily palm. Anyway, that doesn't tell you either what they're doing. So the point is, you know, this is a big deal. This is a theatrical presentation that John gets about the book of Revelation. And for this group to say salvation belongs to our Elohim. I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, that this concept is basically saying, hey, we were right. We were right. Okay, so there's some say 50,000, some say 80,000 Protestant denominations, plus the Catholic, plus the Orthodox, plus then the Jews and the Muslims and Hindus and Buddhists and all these other religions. And nobody really knows which one is right, which one is true. And I've asked people before, how do you know whether you're believing the truth? It's like, oh, I have faith. You could believe in anything, and that doesn't make it true. So what's preached, and I've heard it many times, is have faith in your faith. So the idea of somebody standing in front of Jesus on the last great day, the great gathering, and say, Lord, Lord, hey, we've been hoping, we've been looking forward to this day. And he says, I don't know you. What are you talking about? You don't know us. We prayed in your name. We worshiped in your name. We cast out devils in your name. We healed people in your name. We did miracles in your name, as if the signs and wonders of casting out devils and doing miracles was the evidence, the proof that you had it correct, that you're right. If signs and wonders were the proof that you happen to be on the right side, the right team, that you happen to be part of the group that actually knew and believed the correct doctrine of reality, why would Yeshua say an evil, a wicked generation looks for signs and wonders? But then he goes on and says, well, once the Ruach HaKodesh has come upon you and you'll go forth preaching and followed by signs and wonders. And it's like, well, why even play into that? Someone was saying the other day that they know people who say the proof that you're right about whatever it is your doctrine is that you pray for people and they get healed. They get delivered of weird mojo, bad spirits. Well, is that true? But then in Deuteronomy 13, Yahweh says, there's a certain, you might say it's kind of a test. If there's a prophet or a dreamer dreams and they tell you something and it doesn't come true, that's not from me. So if they tell you something prophetically, it has to come true. He says, but if it does come true, so you'd think it was from me, but they try to lead you astray from what I've already told you. What I've already told your forefathers. This is a test from me. Well, we're talking about the Lord's Prayer of our Father, you might say, last week, and it says, lead us not into temptation. That word temptation being nun samic is the word for test, trial. It doesn't necessarily mean trial meaning a court case, but it certainly means to experiment. It also means assay and essay. Assay might be a strange word, A-S-S-A-Y, but in English, when you've got, back in the gold rush days, you'd get some ore out of the ground. Hey, look at, I found gold. You take it to the assayer's office, and he would run some tests on it and determine whether that's really gold or just something that looks like gold, or what purity is it. That's to assay. If you take a true-false question test in school, even if you don't know the subject, you got a 50% chance you might get the answer right, and they might think, okay, well, you know what you're doing, but you don't have any idea what you're doing. But when you take an essay test, you have a blank page of paper in front of you, and you have to write down everything you know about this subject. It's hard to fake that unless you spin it by some other way of your maneuverings. But if you're required to download, as it were, put on paper all the information you have regarding this subject, and then you're going to be evaluated as to how much information were you able to regurgitate to the teacher, you pretty much got to, here it is, this is what I've got. So that concept is nun samic. So when it says lead us not into temptation, what are we actually asking him? If he says he tries, he plumbs the depths of a man's heart, who is he? What's he going to do if we put him in a predicament? Well, you never know until you are in the predicament. You could say, oh yeah, by golly, I'll be like this and I'll be like that. But when you're put in the situation, now what are you going to do? It's like you can think of yourself as heroic and courageous, but when there's a really dangerous, genuinely dangerous, scary situation with whether it's hanging off the side of a cliff or wild animals or raging river, now you've got to try to do something to engage it, and you have to be courageous because there's a very serious risk of your own well-being, your own life. And to push through that, that's where we would classify courage, or being valiant, or just maybe being stupid, tempting the devil, I've heard it called. But my point is, if you look at the virtues, let's call them fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, long-suffering, Galatians 5:22, temperance, mercy, self-control. None of those mean anything unless you're actually put to the test or to the challenge to not express those things. You can say, look, I've got perfectly good self-control. It's like, well, you're not provoked yet. Let somebody or something or circumstances provoke you. And it's like, no, I've still got self-control. Well, you're not provoked enough yet. Let the circumstances provoke you to the point where you just can't take it any longer, and you're about to just go ballistic. Now let's see if you have self-control. And then push you past that and see if you have self-control. Be patient. Okay, but you're in a big hurry. Say you have to get to the hospital, or you get to a meeting, and a lot of money on the line, and you got somebody doing stupid things, talking on their cell phone in front of you in the car, blocking traffic, Oh, you're supposed to be patient? I'm just saying, try to think of the most disturbing situation and then say, now be patient there. That's kind of being put to the test. That's, you like to think that you were one thing, and now let's just push it to the point where that stuff's happening, and now see how you do. If you were in no big hurry, and say, oh, I don't care, take all day, I don't care. Well, then you're not being challenged with self-control or patience. It's when you do care and you're challenged. So what I'm saying is that in my life experience, you could just personally, I could look at things that happen and say, well, these good things happened because you prepared and were diligent. The bad things happened because you were not prepared. You were not diligent and you brought them upon yourselves. It's like, does that mean that good people who are prepared and diligent and keep their mind attending to things should have a good life? It'd be nice to believe that, but that's not what happens. There was a book written, Why Do Good Things Happen to Bad People, or Why Do Bad Things Happen to Good People? And you could say, because that's not the way it works. So if I choose to get a perspective on reality, if I choose to invent my own reality, my own understanding of reality, where I say, this life is a series of tests that get harder and harder, worse and worse, trying to break your heart, break your spirit, break your mind, break your body. And if we prevail till the end, to our last dying breath, Hudu la yuaki tov, we get to go to heaven, or we get raptured, or we are accepted, however you want to define what's after this. Is that true? Well, I could choose to believe that's true, but that's not necessarily true. I could choose to believe in the rapture, but I know a whole bunch of people who say the rapture is a total fake. It's not going to happen. It's a scam. It's a psyop. There is no rapture to be expected. It's all just made up gobbledygook from the church. Some little girl 200-300 years ago had a dream or something, and it became doctrine, and somebody else would say, no way, it goes all the way back to Thessalonians and Matthew, and people have believed in the rapture all along. It's like, I don't know. I've heard too many different stories to know anything. Well, then how do you know what's true? The question is, if I can look at this life and say, what's the reason for us even being here? Well, here we are. But then they talk about, hey, this whole thing's a simulation. I've heard people, they talk about the film The Matrix and how the actual reality is human bodies are being, call it being farmed in call it a laboratory of sorts, hooked up to battery, and their mind, like having a dream, is having an experience, but it's not real. It's in the mind. The mind is engaging it as if it's real, but the body isn't having the experience. And then you could say, well, what's the difference? That gets into a whole nother matter. But the question is, what is reality? And people say, hey, look, there's glitches in the matrix. You can see surveillance video cameras where things will all of a sudden appear. And it's like, does that mean there's time travel? Can people teleport back and forth and all of a sudden appear? Are those angels? You see weird, creepy things. Is that all AI, computer generated CGI imagery where somebody's just putting scary stuff up? Or are those what looks like aliens or creatures that are unidentifiable? Do they exist or not? Well, they're captured on film, on video. Well, I could fundamentally say, I don't know and I don't care. If I try to put my energy towards finding out for sure whether there are giants and demons and aliens, or whether the earth is globular or flat, or whether there's a rapture or not, or whether Jesus Christ is going to accept me or deny me when I stand in front of him, I could literally go insane. These guys in the book of Revelation saying salvation belongs to our Elohim are essentially saying, wow, this is the proof we got it right. Look, we're standing here. And the Elohim we believed in is the one who saved us. So therefore, we know we're right. And even though there's people from every nation and tribe and tongue, not necessarily Christians, not necessarily Jews or Buddhists, but who are these people? So this idea of saying, if Yeshua says, I am the truth. So Pilate asked a big question when they were interrogating him, Yahusha. They said, I forget the exact context, but Pilate said, what is truth? So it's almost like he was having a conversation with somebody or mulling it in his own mind. And when Yeshua brought up this subject of truth, what is truth? So we're going to look at that for a moment. So the concept here is something may be true, but is that the same thing as the concept of truth? I would say it's not the same. Truth is it a definition, or is it a status of reality, of something that is? Something that is means that regardless of whether there was any human Adam to think about it, believe it, contemplate it, have faith in it, it's the reality. Why is it the reality? Because the Elohim, who was the creator of heaven and earth, caused that to be, to exist, to be, that the reality of whatever things are, whatever's really going on. That's this concept of truth, but truth isn't what exists. Truth is a bigger, more esoteric concept. The fact that something can be called truth goes beyond truly what exists. So in pondering this, it's like, boy, it's really hard to even give it an exact definition. What is truth? But so what? If nobody can define it, why do we even have to deal with it? If these people in the book of Revelation, see, if you jump into chapter 8 following, which we looked at a little bit, I think it was last week. And when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour, and I saw 7 messengers who stood before the throne of Elohim. To them were given 7 shofars. And it's like, okay, now things start getting ugly. They start blowing these trumpets. But so this thing in chapter 7 is the last of the good times, you might say. You get to chapter 8:13, I heard an eagle which flew in the midst of the heavens, and it had a tail of blood, while it said with a loud voice, woe, woe to them who live on the earth because of this remaining sounds of the trumpets of the 3 messengers who are to sound. Well, you could say, gosh, Revelation 8 and 9. But you see, that's not the devil who's running the show. This is Yahweh's guys. Yahweh's guys his angels are blowing the trumpets and doing these things. But the tail end of chapter 7 here, I'm thinking that the crowd that's so big nobody can count, who say they have this branch palm frond in their hand, which speaks of victory, of triumph, of reality, of white robes, and it's like, we were right, and here we are. This is great. And they seem to be aloof, separated from the trumpets. Doesn't say they were raptured. Do they live on the face of the earth while the 7 trumpets are blowing? Doesn't say. Well, they're up in the heavens, and it says that they're in the throne room, and he will wipe every tear from their eye, and he will feed them and protect them. Yeah, but feed them and protect them from whom? In heaven where there's no adversary? It doesn't make that clear. So I don't know. All I can say is that's the objective, is to be part of that group. So I could say, well, they know the truth. Well, if Yeshua says, I'm the truth, what does that mean? I am the truth. Well, he also said, I'm the way and I'm the life. If he's the way, the truth, and life, that's the way it's written that he said. You could say, well, if I am the way, then that means out of all possible ways, he's this one to the exclusion of all the others. This way. You could believe that he's the way and never engage the way. Does that still count? If you have faith that whether you call him Jesus or Yahusha or Yahweh or Yahweh, Jehovah, if you believe that your deity is the right way, does that count for anything? Who gets to make up the rules? What's acceptable? Doctrines will tell you what's acceptable, but it seems like there's such contradiction between the religions and between even within a religion. You've got different sects of Judaism, of Islam, and you've got sects of like the different Protestant denominations. And a bunch of them are not acceptable compared to the other ones. At least that's what they say. No way the Presbyterians that go along with the Anglicans or the Lutherans. What's the truth and what matters? And to say, look, I just believe he's going to take care of things. He's going to take care of things by separating, as it were, the sheep from the goats and say to a bunch of them, depart from me, I never knew you. And they get pitched into the lake of fire. That's a pretty unacceptable casual result, or the result to a casual attitude if it doesn't matter. So the question is, how is there any way to recognize whether we have the truth? Is it whimsically just believe what the infrastructure of your culture over the years, grandma, grandpa, your parents, they taught you this, your culture, the founding fathers believe this. Okay, I'm an American, so we're a Christian. Well, not necessarily. That's not how it works. And you could be raised, say, Romanian Orthodox, Russian Eastern Orthodox, Greek Orthodox. That doesn't make it true. It might be true, but it doesn't make it true. You could believe all the stuff, doesn't mean it's true. In fact, how do you know whether it is true? How do you know whether the Orthodox faith, again, whether it's Greek Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox, Romanian Orthodox, there might be other classifications, but the idea of saying, I know that's true because the saints, because the monks engage in miraculous signs and wonders, even present tense. Saint Constantine, officiating at the Council of Nicaea, officially changed the Sabbath day from the seventh day to the first day. That proves that he's a saint and that he's worthy of regard, right? Only the Torah says, do not add to or take away from anything that's said. Don't change anything. Deuteronomy 13, if there's a prophet, if there's a dreamer of dreams, and if they try to change something, that's the indication that they're not of Yahuwah. So how did St. Constantine become a saint? He was the emperor of the Roman Empire. How did he become a saint if he officiated or was responsible for changing the Sabbath day from the seventh to the first, even under the pretense of honoring Jesus for raising from the dead Sunday morning, which isn't true either. It's been Saturday night, but that's point is, you can't change anything of Yahuwah's. That makes you wrong. That makes you not holy, not kadosh. Especially if you do it on purpose. You can do it by accident and go, oops, uh-oh, we got to make a correction as soon as you find out. We were, as children, brought up to engage in the festivities of Easter and Christmas and Halloween. And then at some point, somebody said, what are you doing? Look at this. This is what this came from. This is what this is. This is what it's about. And you go, shut up. You're ruining our party. But the truth is, that's what that stuff is. And so then you have to think, well, how can I party with this stuff if I'm supposed to be B'nai Israel, son of Elohim? Something's wrong. And to make the correction of what's wrong. But how do you know if it's right or wrong? If Yeshua says, I'm the way, and you go, it doesn't matter. There's a bunch of ways. You negate what he says. If he says, I'm the truth, is he saying, I'm giving you true words? Isn't that the same as the way? But if he says, I am truth, I am the truth. Like I said, what is the word for truth? What is the meaning behind this concept of truth? And if Pilate, who must have been a pretty smart guy, I'm going to guess, probably a philosopher of sorts, he was governor of a volatile area, Judea, Palestina there. The truth. What is truth? If Elohim back at the very beginning created all the things, all the articles of creation in heavens and on earth and under the earth, in the sea and outer space, but he also created mathematics, physics, chemistry, that things work according to a certain way, but he also had to create this concept of truth. This concept of truth would be then what makes mathematics work the way it does without slipping around. 2 + 2 = 4. 2 × 3 = 6. It doesn't slip around. There might be some universe, some dimension where it's not so fixed, but because of this concept of truth, it stays where it's put. That's my thinking about this. Well, we could call it truth in English and say it's something that's true. It's like, no, I'm trying to say it's bigger behind the scenes. The concept of truth. Things are true. Things express truth as a statement which is true. Yahusha might have said, I am telling you the truth, but for him to be truth, boy, that's pretty esoteric. That's almost like a, say if there was one note, a tone, which is pure true. So I don't know anything about it, but you hear stories in Sanskrit, Hindu, they have this word om, and it's like, is that a tone? That's that tone, which is the pure truth. Well, maybe that's what it's supposed to be. I don't know. But how do you know what tone that is? Well, it must be 528 hertz. 528, the color of new growth green, and your cells vibrate at 528 when you feel in love, and things are thriving at 528. Yeah, but that's just if you take a frequency, which is an oscillating wave, and when it reaches a certain place, that's 528. How many oscillations per second? A second's a random consideration of time. Doesn't the truth have to be more behind the scenes than that? White light, you could say, can be broken into a spectrum of all the other colors. Does it contain all the other colors? It's just white light. It could be broken down to all the other colors. It doesn't necessarily contain the colors. It could be broken into the pieces and seen as the other colors. So you try to wrap your mind around that and say, well, what if there was a tone that composed all the other tones, including 528, but including 527 and 529, and every possible number. Would that be truth? If there was a concept of truth that everything else that was ever to be expressed in the full array, the full gamut, the full spectrum in every dimension, mathematics and sound and light and every possible thought and every possible thing, what works, what doesn't work, what is not, if that full container that is because Elohim made that what is, if that's truth, what is that? How do you wrap your mind on that? Years ago, when I was in college, somebody was telling me about this notion called cosmic consciousness. I said, I'd never heard of that. What is that? And they said, well, you can't define it. And they went on to describe a little bit, and I said, okay, I think I got it. I got it. They said, no, you can't. By definition, nobody can perceive or understand cosmic consciousness. I said, yeah, I understand that. But I believe I understand what you're saying that cosmic consciousness is. And it made the guy, I wasn't trying to be a jerk, but he thought it was just, you can't be any more stupid than that to say that you understand what this thing is that can't be understood. So I'm saying that to understand what truth is probably like cosmic consciousness, though whoever owns that phrase might have their definition that I'm defiling by even suggesting it. But I'm likening it to that and saying, you know, the closest thing I can come to and looking at this stuff is Aleph Tav. If there was a way to describe what is Aleph Tav, well, it's one word that's never translated. Well, then how do you know what it is? Well, it's the first and last letter of the alphabet, but what does that mean? Well, it contains all the other letters. Yeah, but what does that mean? If I was to say to understand Aleph Tav is to have cosmic consciousness, or to, if what Aleph Tav really represents is this truth, well, it happens to be broken down into the 22 fragments, 22 letters. Is that correct? Well, maybe it is, maybe it's not. I'm just pondering this. But if I'm saying, well, if it's not and nobody can know, then we're done. Let's just go take a walk. But if it's something that can be pondered, then I can take that concept and plug it into every verse that I want to look at that has something to do with it. And so you go to John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word. Now, if I suggest that the Word is the Aleph Tav, is this truth, why does it say Word instead of in the beginning was truth? Well, the Word became flesh, and that's that man we call Yahusha. So when Yahusha says, I am the truth, or I am truth, that's a pretty profound statement. But we could say, oh, yeah, I believe you. So what? Nobody knows what to do with it. Oh. And then he says, I'm the life. I'm the way, so forget all the other ways. Forget all the other religions. You have to follow my religion. You have to be a Christian. I'm the truth. So if anybody says, you can say, it's the truth. You don't know. You're going to burn in hell, so shut up. Is that what he means? And he says, I'm the life. I am the life. Oh, well, he's the guy who died and resurrected so he can give us life. Is that what he meant? You look in Ezekiel chapter 20, Yahuwah, I think 4 times he says, I gave my people my Torah, which if a man does the words of this Torah, he will live in it, by it, through it. He will live by doing these things. There's some impartation of life. Is Yeshua representing a different life if he says, I am the life? If in Ezekiel 20, he always says, I gave you my Torah, that if a man does, he will live. And if Yeshua says, I am the life, he's equating himself with the Torah. But the Torah is words, instructions. He's a bunch of laws. Truth is not a bunch of laws. Truth can be, if we are given a bunch of laws, we constrain our behavior so we will exist within the parameters of what the truth facilitates. Yeah, I could say that. In other words, if truth says be kind to widows and orphans, be generous to widows and orphans, you can say, yeah, they're a bunch of bums, they're lazy, they don't deserve my attention or help. There's more than one or two places that Yahuwah says that he has an eye, a heart for those who are impoverished by circumstances beyond their control, widows and orphans. Truth were to say, who is Yahuwah? Where's his heart? What kind of stuff is he about? And if I align my stuff with his stuff, there's the zone of favor, of success, of life. So for somebody to say, we worship God, Hashem, Adonai, whatever you want to call him, and Jesus Christ is an infidel, a corrupt, renegade, an idiot, a liar. Well, if Yeshua is the way, the truth, and the life, then either your God, who is so alien from him, isn't true, that he is the corrupt one, or your sense of who Yahusha is so corrupt that you can't recognize him. But you see, this group of people in Revelation 7 has cut through all that, and they say, here we are. The one on the throne and the Lamb. Wait a minute, isn't the Lamb the one on the throne? Isn't Jesus Christ the guy sitting on the throne? And he is the Lamb? Or are they two different ones? The one who sits on the throne, we talked about this a few weeks ago. There's this concept, there's this book, I think it was by Rambam, the Guide for the Perplexed. And he says this idea of sitting on a throne. Well, that's a pretty simple picture. A human-like figure sitting on a throne in heaven. You can draw a picture of that. Take a photograph of it. You had your camera handy. But Rambam went on to say those are concepts. They're not objects. To sit is to remain, is to be unmovable. On a throne is to say with this power of jurisdiction which can't be undone. In heaven has to do with some other dimension, but it's not a body sitting in a posture on a chair in a place. But you see, that's the way our language works, is that, no, it is that. But he's saying, no, it's not that. So if that's the guy Rambam is correct, do we have to look at all the words in scripture like this, where that's what it says, but that's not what it says? Well, it only matters if you want to know truth. So if I can read in the scripture that no one has seen Elohim, but Moshe spoke with Elohim face to face, what does that mean? If the one sitting on the throne is not the Lamb, and if Yahusha is rendered typified as the Lamb, then who's that on the throne? His Father? Well, the people say Jesus is the Father because there's a Trinity. Well, then that's not true either. So if the Trinity isn't true, that they're distinctly other, well, they're distinctly one and they're distinctly the other, and it's like, I've heard from archbishops and evangelists and stuff that when they really get it nailed down and say, please identify what is the Trinity. And they said, well, it's a mystery. You just got to accept it. You can't define it. No, just believe it. And I say that to say that if any of us find that our mind will not engage certain ideas, it's not necessarily your fault. It's just that certain ideas are beyond human comprehension by design. In other words, if he says, you guys can't even define truth, you guys can't even define Trinity or how it works, and you don't know the shape of the earth, and you don't know, We don't know anything really. Well, what do we know? Well, so I can go back and look at John 1:1 and say, in the beginning was the Word. And if this word is truth, and this word is Aleph Tav, or this word is what Aleph Tav contains, like white light contains all the other colors, and whether it's visible or invisible wavelength spectrums, get into X-rays and gamma rays and, infrared and ultraviolet. And is that part of what's in white light? Let's say that it is. Let's say that it's not just white light, but let's just say it's or Aleph Vav Resh. Let's just say it's the Aleph containing and going through the whole spectrum until it gets to Tav. Aleph Mem Tav. Well, that's the word emet. That's the word truth. But what does Mem represent? Water? So there's an ox and water, and then a sign, like a cross on a cemetery grave. That's a sign. 3 rocks piled on top of each other if you're on a trail. That's a sign that you're still on the trail. An ox, some water, and 3 rocks. That's truth? That's crazy talk. So if I can't wrap my mind around truth because it was intentionally made to be beyond the scope of human fathoming, human grappling, got it, right there it is. Is it just left to me to choose to believe whatever I'm told? They say that eyeballs not only are receivers, but they're projectors. Some quantum physics stuff. Which is to say, you might be able to feel when somebody's looking at you. So you see movies where somebody's hiding and somebody's looking for them in the room, and they're maybe looking out of a crack behind a wall that they're hiding. It's like, can the person in the room feel that they're being watched? If that's true, then if you're trying to hide, you better not look through that crack. You better keep your eyes shut. Do eyeballs actually project energy, or do they only receive? If you ever catch somebody's eye, you're just looking around in the crowd and there's somebody looking at you, your eyeballs catch. Do you ever feel that little? It's like, oh, sorry, I'm not trying to look at you. I'm just looking around and pretend it never happened. Or if I'm sitting here and I'm just looking around and here's the window and there's trees and sky and bugs, and do I recognize truth? Oh, wait a minute, truth isn't a tree, truth isn't a person. Well, Jesus is the truth. Let's go back to this concept of truth being this bigger thing. What if you were just be looking and all of a sudden you felt truth looking at you? Would you recognize it? Imagine that. Imagine if you were just scanning the universe, whether it's your own sandbox or your neighborhood or your astrophysicist looking through a telescope, you're just living your life. You don't know where truth is. You don't know what it is. You don't know how to reckon with it. And all of a sudden, you feel truth engaging your eyeballs, looking at you. Can you imagine that feeling? You can't necessarily say, oh, that's Jesus, or that's the Holy Spirit, or that's God. If it's true, if it's the truth looking at you. There's this concept of a wink. Looking it up online, different subjects people are talking about, there's facial gestures, but a wink has numerous different meanings. One is a flirtation. One is, I'm going to tell a joke here. One is, hey, there's something between me and you. Not for anybody else. It can mean a whole bunch of other things. Some people think it's evil. The Bible talks about it a little bit. There's a guy that wrote a book called God Winks. And that popped up online. And the guy's trying to get this phrase, God wink, is another, is a concept he's trying to get it worked into the language, saying if you feel you get an answered prayer and you know you've engaged the divine, that's a God wink. I'm not trying to describe that. I'm trying to describe something a little different. I'm saying, what if truth itself caught your eye of attention and winked at you? Like, what? At you. Truth were to wink at you. There's nothing evil. There's nothing seductive. There's nothing like, I'm going to play a joke, but it's like, I know that you see me, and I know that you know that I know that you know that I know that you know. We're looking at each other. And you know it's the truth. Yeah, but don't other people of other religions have that same experience? Maybe they do. And I can't say that they are going to burn in hell if they don't believe like I do. It's a very Christian thing to say, I'm right and everybody else is wrong. Everybody else is in big trouble. I've got the glorious pie in the sky in the Garden of Eden in heaven, and everybody else is going to be screaming for eternity in a lake of fire. Too bad for you. I warned you, sucker. You should have believed me. I'm not going to say those words. But I'm going to say that I'm going to choose to believe that truth has a way of looking at somebody's inner being, and you can know that that's the truth. And if truth were to wink at you, and if you go with that, what if it looks like Islam or Buddhism? Hey, too bad, you're going to be condemned. It's like, oh, gosh, you better just be a Christian. Yeah, but if Christianity is not the same as Yahusha, then Christianity, by definition, because they changed the Sabbath day, because they changed his name, because they changed his Moedim, because they changed his Torah, Christianity, by definition, then, is just as corrupt and evil and wrong as Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, Judaism, Shintoism, Taoism, any other ism that they want to think is that wrong. If you change the truth and promote it, turning your back intentionally on what Yahuwah caused to be the truth, you're just as wrong as all those others you are confident are wrong. How can we know then? If we can't trust our teachers, if we can't trust the feeling that we're right, if we can't trust our own faith, then what do we have? If he made Aleph Tav to be truth, if he made Aleph through Tav to be the container of these other 20 letters, 22, including the Aleph and Tav, then what they mean, what they are saying, is the reckoning or evaluating of what truth is. And to say that the Mishkan pattern is the orchestration of those letters is that which is the bearing or the capstan. Capstan is that thing on a boat where you put the rope around and it pulls against it. A bearing is that the wheel turns on that. The thing that he gave us, being this Mishkan pattern, the significance of it is that it's his signature. It aligns all the aspects of truth. He did give us something, and because human consciousness is a projection of this word in John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word. The Word was with Elohim. The Word was Elohim. All things that were created through this Word. The Word became flesh. That means human beings, Adam is a projection of intent through this Word, if you consider this Word like a lens. And that even Adam's consciousness, the way Adam thinks, the way Adam has at his disposal the use of his hands or the use of how he figures to live on the face of the earth, all has to come through this word. So if his mind, his heart, his consciousness is a projection, is an aspect of this word, then for him to look back through this word and behold Elohim, the two-way lens, then anybody who says, oh, we can't know the truth, we can't have cosmic consciousness, we can't know Elohim, we can't know anything, well, they're wrong. Because we can know exactly what we were composed of or made from, which is this word in Adamic format. And then for Yahusha to become Adam as this archetype, this pinnacle of perfection, this zenith of iconic being, the Adam named Yahusha. If that's true, then we should be able to trust his word. Anyway, you got to take a break.